My name is Lily Qi. Last name is spelled Qi, which is a mainland Chinese way of spelling Qi. Qi is like the energy inside you, in case you have difficulty reconciling the pronunciation and the spelling. And in many ways, people like me represent the changing Montgomery County, how we have diversified and grown to be what it is today. I consider myself a student, first and foremost, of this great community. Even though I did not grow up here, I grew up at a very difficult time in China, which is why I came here. During a very tumultuous time, I don't know how many of you have heard of Cultural Revolution. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and when I finally had an opportunity to come to study in the United States, I gave up everything and jumped on that. And that was almost 3 decades ago. So everything I am today, the American woman that I have become, is due to the great opportunities that America and this community has afforded me. So I try to do everything I can to promote economic competitiveness, to build inclusive community, to contribute in whatever way I can. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about a subject of great passion of mine, which is Montgomery County, who we are, and where we are going forward. As Natasha mentioned, I am currently working on economic development and workforce development strategies and partnerships. I consider those functions to be central to a government's functions, and I will talk more about that. I always like to start my talk about Montgomery County, whether it's community or economy, with what I understand about Montgomery County today, okay? A snapshot of where we stand. So as we all know, we are a million plus people community. One of the largest counties in the United States among the 3,150-ish counties. We are one of the largest and still one of the wealthiest and best educated counties. In many ways, by many accounts, we are one of the most enviable communities in the United States or anywhere in the world, you could say that, right? We are connected to major urban hubs or commercial centers or economic hubs, which is Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, and Baltimore. That is also a major hub and a draw of investments, jobs, and talent and opportunities. We are also home to 18 federal institutions. And what is unique about Montgomery County's federal institutions compared to, let's say, some in Northern Virginia and some in Washington, D.C., is that our cluster of federal institutions tend to be very deep in R&D assets, in research and development assets. They're very much science-based, technology-based. So that gives us the unrivaled assets in R&D that become the bedrock of our knowledge-based economy. And we should all feel so fortunate about that, because that drives the kind of human capital we have. I oftentimes jokingly say that Montgomery County is a community where even PhDs can find good jobs. Think about that, right? Okay, because I have many friends. I'm one of the least educated people. I do have 2 master's degrees, but they all have PhDs. So our quality human capital is something we should take great pride in. We do have the largest concentration of people with PhDs anywhere in the United States. Our adult population over the age of 25 have twice the national average of people with bachelor's degrees. Well, nationally, it's about 28% or so. Montgomery County is 57% of our adults over the age of 25 with bachelor's degrees, and about 1 in 3 have advanced degrees. So these are important drivers of our economy. And we have one of the best public school educational system. And not just the MCPS, but we also have public education by way of Montgomery College, which is one of the best community colleges and most innovative and nimble community colleges and most comprehensive as well in the country. And also universities in Shady Grove, right? Talking about student opportunities. A student born and raised in Montgomery County who went through 12 years of MCPS does not need to leave the hometown to finish a 4-year degree if he or she chooses to go through 2 years of Montgomery College and then finish another 2 years at universities at Shady Grove. And please understand the universities at Shady Grove is not one university. It's the hub of 9 different institutions under one system called the University System of Maryland. And that's the only unique institution model in the country that many other places are now emulating. It lowers the cost, it keeps the talent, homegrown talent here, and it also connects directly with a lot of the growing industries. And of course, we're also home to many global headquarters and several Fortune 500 companies. Despite Discovery's choice to leave in a couple of years, we are still home to the world's largest hotel chain. And you know that, right? Marriott. Yes, we are home to Marriott. And thank God we are home to Marriott, because Marriott brand, because I grew up in Shanghai, every time I go back to China, I try to also promote Montgomery County by visiting some local officials and say, oh, let me give you some updates, and they always love it, because there are so many Chinese Americans living, working here. Sometimes they go back and lecture and do research and all that. So there's a lot of going back and forth. Every time I mention Marriott, people's faces just lit up and say, really? Everybody has heard of Marriott because there's Marriott every other block, right? But besides Marriott, we're also home to Lockheed Martin, headquartered here, okay? We are also home to Geico, to Honest Tea, to Wedding Wire, to Medimune, and to Host Hotels. Not many people know, but Host Hotels is actually a Fortune 500 company. It is spin-off from Marriott. So we have a lot to brag about, to be proud of. And of course, I should always mention that we are very global as a community. 40% of our adult population speaks another language than English, or in addition to English. People like me who speak English, but also speak another language. That is a huge economic competitive advantage if we're gonna do business globally. But we are also a rapidly changing community with our own challenges and on many fronts. For example, let me first talk about the changing demographics, okay? Now, you have to know that Montgomery County today is considered one of the communities with the best indication of longevity, life expectancy, okay? We rival some towns in Japan in terms of how our people can enjoy longevity and healthy, vibrant senior life. That is all something we should take pride in. But with that rapidly aging population, we also are facing what we call a senior tsunami, a silver tsunami, right? And I didn't coin the term, but I love the term. The silver tsunami means we have so many people who are rapidly aging, it becomes a large cluster of our population and a higher percentage of our population makeup in the community. And as people become seniors, they tend to live on either fixed income or no new incomes coming in. They have to live off of their wealth accumulated over the years. So any economic volatility can hit that population fairly hard. And also it has impact on your ability to attract younger populations when you have a large cohort of seniors, because a community needs a mixed population in order to grow our future economy, in order to support the tax base, right? To grow entrepreneurship and all of that. So these are both opportunities and challenges for a community like Montgomery County to consider, okay? And I need to also point out that, on that senior front, you need to know that Montgomery County overall, between 2001 and 2017, in 16-year span, our overall population growth was 16%, okay? But the point I want to make is the people over age 60 has grown, the Montgomery County overall population has grown by 18% during time spent, not 16%. But the people who are 60 years or older have grown by 64%. So that is many times more, okay? And by 2040-ish, we would have just about twice as many seniors as we have today. So that is what I mean by a silver tsunami, okay? And on another front, we are also more diverse socioeconomically, not just culturally. What I mean by that is many of you probably did not know that today in Montgomery County, because of suburbanization of poverty, and by the way, have you heard of suburbanization of poverty? Okay, now part of the reason for the suburbanization of poverty, because in the past we tended to think that urban cores are where the poverty resides, but no longer is the case. Suburbs tend to be where the lower income people want to come because that's where the housing tend to be a little bit more affordable. Okay, with the suburbanization of poverty, and part of that is because poor people get pushed over with DC's revitalization and with the rapid growth and the density, it gets more and more unaffordable. It has essentially become a victim of its own success in many ways, right? We are seeing now 1 in 3 Montgomery County public school students on free and reduced priced meal. It's called the farm, free and reduced price meal. 1 in 3 in one of the wealthiest communities in the country. That is a startling statistic, even though we are still one of the wealthiest communities in the country, okay? So these things all add up the cost of maintaining government services and paying for the schools and educating our kids and growing our economy. And that number in aggregate of the student population who are on farm is actually larger than DC public school student enrollment in aggregate, okay? I also want to say something about the changing economy. Because of the recession around 2000, about 10 years ago, around 2008, right, followed by sequestration, we have a loss of a lot of high-paying and good jobs, jobs that are tied to federal spending, whether by direct employment or by contracting, or the related industries that support those contractors and support those employments. So we have been hit very hard, partly because of our heavy dependency on federal spending as an economy and as a community. Okay. At the same time, we are seeing, in terms of the recovery, the fastest growing jobs are low-wage and low-skill jobs, or minimum wage jobs. Okay. Jobs, when we say are low-wage, are the ones that pay less than about $19 or $20 per hour. Those are low-wage jobs in Montgomery County that make it unaffordable to live in the community, okay? And the low-skill jobs are the jobs that require no more than a high school diploma. So the fastest growing jobs tend to be those jobs in our community if we don't do anything today, if we don't have a strategy today, okay? And there's definitely, as I mentioned earlier, an increasing cost and burden on government to generate tax revenue to pay for the things that we take pride in: good schools, libraries, parks, recreational facilities, senior centers, transportation, you name it, right? For us to maintain quality of life, these are points of pride of being what it means to be a Montgomery County resident, So how do we expand the tax revenue when these are the challenges we face? And we also have to understand, even though we are home to some Fortune 500 companies and global giants, we are, at the end of the day, a community of small businesses, because about 86% of our businesses in Montgomery County have fewer than 20 employees. And about 90-some% of businesses have fewer than 100, 95 or 6% of them have fewer than 100 employees, okay? The challenges with a community made of small businesses is that the multiplying effect is very limited. We need more anchor employers and large employers, whether they are hospitals like a large, major anchor tenants that can fuel economic growth in multiple ways, or private sector headquarters, corporations. Because oftentimes, talking about students looking for opportunities, very few people can find the job opportunities in small businesses because nobody has heard of them. But if you have a Marriott, everybody knows you're home to Marriott, and they will go on their website and look for jobs, and businesses can contract with them. There are all kinds of multiplying effect in an economy. Okay, so these are our challenges as an economy. And beyond looking at Montgomery County, let's also look at some of the larger trends globally and regionally. Okay. When I moved here, that was 20 years ago, to Montgomery County, the population was not nearly as big as it is today, and the economy was very different. people still more or less considered Montgomery County as a bedroom community. Okay, even 20 years ago, right? Today, it is much more of a job center, an economic engine. And that's not just Montgomery County. I'm talking about Fairfax and some other inner suburbs. So in a matter of 20, 30 years, a lot of the suburbs have grown up. They have become destinations of their own rights. They are no longer being defined as next to Washington, D.C. They all have adopted their own characteristics in different ways. Northern Virginia has become more of a headquarters hub. They have a lot more global headquarters and technology corridors. Montgomery County has become a national leader in biotech. We're very strong. We continue to be very strong in biotech and biohealth and all that, right? And we are basically a very important service-oriented professional community, okay? When I was a student getting my second master's degree, that was an MBA from American University, which was quite a while ago. I remember in my first class, the professor said, there are two very important trends driving the world's economy. And that was, as I said, quite a while ago, okay? Last century. He said, globalization and technology are going to be the most important drivers of our economy going forward. Okay, and that was at the height of tech, what we now call tech bubble. Okay, now I look at it. Honestly, I didn't remember much else that I learned from those 2 years. Right? You never know what you learn from a degree, but schooling is still important. So those two things kind of really resonated with me. But now I look back and I would say the professor probably failed to predict how urbanization would be another very important trend in driving the global economy. Okay, technology absolutely is driving the global economy because remember all those small towns that voted for Trump? Remember all those poor communities that voted for Trump? Sometimes people vote against their own interests, right? But there are Americans who honestly believe that they lost their jobs because the Chinese and Mexicans took their jobs, right? Because people feed that rhetoric to them. They want someone else to blame. It's not their fault. It's not because their leaders of their small towns and states fail to pivot and to transition their economy and give them the opportunities to take new jobs and train them or whatever. But the reality is the jobs were lost mostly because of technology, because of automation, because we no longer need the tailors at banks, because we like, as consumers, with a click to buy things instead of going to Walmart. Because of these larger technology trends, we are changing the way we live and connect with each other and conduct our daily lives. And that is the economy. How we live our lives every day is the economy, right? And so related to that note is the issue of globalization. With technology, the borders become disappearing, right? And the difference between urban and suburbs are disappearing too, okay? So what that means is also, in a super connected world where you can just click to like someone on Facebook, you feel like you're connected, the sense of place is actually more important than ever, ironically. You would think because of that, place doesn't matter anymore, right? I can conduct a business in my basement just like I can conduct a business in an office. But ironically, it's the opposite. Quality place or quality places have become even more important. And quality places tend to drive your economic growth in ways that nobody has seen before, okay? Where you are is much more important to your success and your odds of success than how much education you have had. So in other words, a person with a bachelor's degree or even the master's degree tend to be paid a lot less in Flint, Michigan than a high school student in Montgomery County. Okay? It is because of where you are. So place actually becomes a lot more important in 21st century. And related to that is also globalization. Because of technology and because of connectivity, because of disappearing borders between jurisdictions and countries, we are much more connected, definitely. So how can Montgomery County ride that tide and become more globalized is both an opportunity and a challenge. And finally, I also want to say we are definitely a talent-driven economy. A community that can attract the talent is also a community that can attract opportunities and jobs and investments. Okay. In the past, we tend to think if you build a corporation, if you build a company, if you build a plant, people will relocate their whole families to chase those jobs, right? And that happened for generations. But now companies go where your people are. And Amazon is one of those examples. In attracting Amazon, it's no longer about where their customers are, because their customers are national or global. It is about where their workers are going to come from. It is about what makes their workers happy. It's about dog parks. It's about walkable communities. It's about nightlife. It's about opportunities to connect with local communities, to volunteer, to do things, to do good and do well at the same time. So
housing.
Yes, housing definitely is a very important issue. Okay. So one of the things I might have missed in talking about urbanization is that today, globally, about half of the world's population live in cities. Half, okay? Now, by 2050, which is mid-century, 70% of the world's populations will be living in cities. So cities in 21st century will adopt the new importance, just like quality places. Cities will drive economic growth. Cities will define what efficient living looks like instead of suburban sprawl, okay? Cities will define what environmental sustainability looks like, okay? So instead of sprawl, you stack people up vertically, right? You provide public transit. Let me do, because I consider myself a teacher, I like to do a periodic check of how we are doing. How are we doing? So far, so good? Okay. Any questions, please interrupt me anytime. Okay, you don't have to wait, because sometimes I would forget the question I have if I had to wait an hour to ask that question. Okay.
How do we get those younger kids, those younger smart kids to stay here?
Yes, thank you. Talent retention is extremely important. Do you want me to answer that question now?
Whatever you want.
Okay, so let me write it down, and I can answer that later after I finish everything, okay?
You're writing down questions.
Yes.
Put the transportation one down too. That's key with what's happening lately.
Okay.
Very important.
Talent retention and transportation.
And I did say housing.
Yep.
And I'll shut up.
No, don't shut up. I want you to.
One more thing, perhaps, if you can comment on. One burden it seems to me that Montgomery County has is that we're part of a metropolitan area that has too many jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm.
There are metropolitan areas that have one political jurisdiction, and then there are some that have two. For example, in the New York metropolitan area, you have New York State and Virginia.
Yep.
Here we're burdened by having three, the district, Virginia, and Maryland, and coordinating economic policy among
Difficult.
three competing entities like that is a challenge. So if you can
Yes.
talk about that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for all of these points. So what does that mean for a community like Montgomery County? We have challenges, but we have tremendous opportunities that very few communities can lay claim to. One such great opportunity, for example, is if you think about places like a Silicon Valley, right? If you think of places like Boston, we all agree they are success stories of Americans' new economy, right? What is different about Montgomery County in this region compared to those places? They have great universities. A lot of the innovation comes from those great universities. What's different about this region is we have great universities. In fact, Montgomery County, within one hour drive, can reach about 50 different universities. And some of them are world-renowned, like Johns Hopkins University, for example. But what we have that very few other communities can lay claim to is the deep bench of R&D assets from federal institutions. And they're not going to go away. And that is something we need to really understand better and leverage better. We should not see our federal institutions as simply employment centers. And that's our community's problem. We have been seeing them only as an employment center, as job opportunities, or at most the contracting opportunities. But what they do should matter. Not just how much they spend locally. What they do in terms of the R&D assets, the research and development assets, can be leveraged globally, which is a huge opportunity. And the key to that is connecting their research or innovation with something called entrepreneurship. In fact, I have heard time and again from these federal institutions leaders who say, how can we introduce our technologies and discoveries and products to your entrepreneurs? Can you bring your entrepreneurs to our door and let me introduce them to what we have? We want them to run companies with these technologies. We want them to take our research and do something about it. But we have a risk-averse community. We don't have a very strong entrepreneurship talent pool. We are a very regulation-driven community because a lot of people work for government or contract with government. Whenever there's a new product, our first instinct, how do we regulate that? Instead of how do we make money out of that, right? So somebody who's a scientist who also runs a science-based company said, in Boston, a small business is like a $5 million company funded by venture money. And in Montgomery County, that business is like a $500,000 business funded by SBIR government grant, and people know how to write grants rather than turning the research into something that people can use to cure diseases and save lives, to actually be useful, rather than publish an article in the journal. So we have this kind of culture that is not risk-taking or rewarding to the risk takers. That is something as a community we need to overcome, okay? And that's related to our federal R&D assets. We're talking about strategy, right? And another opportunity is how do we encourage private sector growth? Because especially in the Trump administration, which is no friends with Maryland, deep blue Maryland, right? The federal budget for Montgomery County's institutions are not likely to grow much. The whole public sector is not growing as much as it used to during the war times, when the rest of the country was suffering. This region was actually laughing all the way to the bank because we had a lot of federal spending, and most of that benefited the capital region. But the federal sector is not growing, and especially these days, when you think about those soft agencies like NIH and FDA and NOAA, which is about climate change, right? So you know that we have to, in order to grow our economy, we have to encourage private sector growth. So one of the very important opportunities for us to focus on is to diversify our economy, to not focus only on a few science-based industries or contracting with federal government or accountants and lawyers. And these are important, bread and butter industries that make up much of our economy. But going forward, that's not going to be enough. You have to organically grow your entrepreneurship just like the rest of the communities in the country. And of course, we need a younger workforce to be willing and able to come back or stay here in Montgomery County. And talent attraction is definitely, attraction and retention is a big challenge for a community like Montgomery County. Because if we are almost as expensive as Northern Virginia, and we're not a cheap community to live in. If you are just as expensive, but not as cool and not as fun, and don't have nightlife beyond 9 o'clock, we have a problem. And it's not that I'm saying we have a problem. I have numbers to prove we have a problem. While our population over 60 is dramatically growing, we have the lowest percentage of millennials among all capital region jurisdictions, and the highest percentage of seniors among capital region jurisdictions. That is not going to add up very well, even though the margin is not big compared to, let's say, another huge suburban community like Fairfax. Okay, so we have a lot of disadvantages we have to overcome, and partly is because of quality places, partly of transit connectivity. So all of these factors, and partly because of diversification of industries, all of these things matter, and housing. So what are our strategies to grow our economy? We all know this is a talent century, so what do we do to grow the talent base, right? And when I say talent, it's not just people with PhDs and master's degrees and scientists and cybersecurity executives. It's a deep talent pool that meet the future industry growth of many different industries. Especially what we need to grow is the middle wage jobs. That's what we call the missing middle. Because Montgomery County is home to a lot of people with a very high income, but it is also facing the fact that the fastest growing jobs are the low wage and the low skill jobs, as I mentioned earlier. So what we end up having is the missing middle. So that's one opportunity that we also need to look at. And that spells the need for diversification of industries.
For the middle, what are we calling
Yeah.
wages?
Yes. Middle wage jobs are roughly between $20 to $40 an hour. Roughly. It's 19 point something to 40. And the middle skill jobs are those jobs that require skills beyond high school diploma, but below 4-year degree. So it spells Montgomery College, right? This is where Montgomery College can play an even larger role, to meet industry demand. So let me get some water. In terms of Montgomery County's economic opportunity, and on that note, I want to show you this document, and you can download that on our county website. Just go to montgomerycountymd.gov, which is the county domain, /strategy. Okay? Yeah, just put /strategy, and you can download this PDF document. This is the Montgomery County's comprehensive economic strategy, and was adopted by the county council. It's county executive strategy adopted by the county.
The name of it is?
It's called a plan for economic prosperity. We call it comprehensive economic strategies. A plan for economic prosperity. Okay. So in this comprehensive economic strategy, in looking at our challenges and opportunities, we identified 5 areas where we need to focus on to grow our economy. Okay, one of such is the overall innovation economy, innovation industries, and the biohealth cluster industry will continue to be important because we are home to both NIH and FDA. They are essentially like the bookends of public health, if you think about that, right? NIH is a lot more research. FDA is how you can go to the market. They regulate the products, okay? And we happen to be home to both. Does everyone know where FDA is? Everybody knows where NIH is. It's in Bethesda, right? But yes, in White Oak, East County.
DOD site, ex-DOD site.
Yeah, because it's relatively new to Montgomery County. It's been here for only a few years after it consolidated all of its regional centers. So biohealth cluster industries are very important, from R&D, from medical devices to drugs, to diagnostic tools, to health IT, for example. And then the whole IT and the cybersecurity data-related cluster industries are definitely important. So all of these are tech-driven, innovation-driven economies that Montgomery County want to grow and grow more of. And the other part is advanced manufacturing. That is also a bright spot and opportunity for Montgomery County because they don't take a lot of land or industrial space compared to traditional manufacturing places, and many of the jobs do require a bachelor's degree or some kind of specialized training, and they pay very well. Okay.
How do you define advanced manufacturing?
Yeah. That's a great question. We actually have many companies in Montgomery County right around this region that are advanced manufacturing companies. They could be anywhere from like electronics, companies that make electronic gadgets, to those that make vehicles for military uses or military goggles or things like that. Or they could be companies that are biomanufacturing, that manufacture things that either supply to the commercial market or to other labs, or for hospital uses or medical devices and those things. They require specialized skills and training. A lot of them actually require engineering degrees, but all of them almost require some kind of STEM education. Okay.
So with the biomanufacturing and the biotech,
Mm-hmm.
is that the industry that traditionally had been in that corridor in New Jersey?
Thank you for asking that question.
Now
Yes.
it seems to have shifted down here.
Yes and no. The New York-New Jersey corridor comparing to Montgomery County's I-270 corridor is very, very different. But it's a good connection and a question to ask because the Montgomery County 270 corridor, and many of you probably know that we are the place where human genome was mapped, okay? And we should all be walking down the street bragging about that, right? Because, I mean, that was the book of how human beings are made, basically. You know, that was a big deal, okay? Now, New York, New Jersey is the corridor mostly for drugs, for small molecule drugs, the kind of pills that most of us use. In fact, 97% of the pills that we take are small molecule chemical drugs. They are easier to regulate because they can be replicated. But bio is different, whole different industry, okay? Now, the trend, economically speaking, is those big pharmas are acquiring Montgomery County-based bio companies because the 21st century is a bio century, okay? We're talking about personalized medicine, precision medicine. Bioproducts tend to work with your body to generate things to cure diseases instead of treating the symptoms, okay? So as this century becomes more of a bio-driven century in the economy, our companies are very much in demand. An example is a couple of British companies acquired our local biotech companies. For example, MedImmune, which started as a government contractor with NIH, now is a global giant. It's the bio arm of AstraZeneca, right? Which is a drug company, okay? But pharma or drug companies have a lot of money, and bio companies need a lot of money. So it's a happy marriage for them, okay? And our own homegrown Human Genome Sciences is another example. It has a product that needed to go to market. It didn't have the money, so it was acquired by another British pharma company, GSK, GlaxoSmithKline. And now GlaxoSmithKline put Rockville as one of its 3 vaccine research centers, global. It's Belgium, Italy, and Rockville. One of the 3 global vaccine centers.
We beat Philadelphia.
Yes,
We beat Philadelphia.
exactly. So that's the beauty of our bio industry. Thank you for asking that question. I didn't mean to digress that much into the bio, but it's a very important industry for Montgomery County. And professional services continue to be important. They take office space. Some don't, like accounting, law firms, and all those professional services. They are still important part of bread and butter of Montgomery County's knowledge-based economy, service industries. But what we need is more product-based industries. So for example, we have a very nascent early cybersecurity industry, right? We don't have a large cybersecurity industry, and our cybersecurity industries tend to be more service-oriented instead of product-based. We need more product-based companies that can scale up, that have patents, that can globalize, not just provide services and consulting services. And one important strategy I also want to highlight is called the corporate and the regional headquarters. It's not an industry, if you think about that, right? It could be any corporate regional headquarters. I would welcome the headquarters of Walmart as I would welcome the headquarters of Amazon. It makes almost no difference because headquarters jobs are not warehouse jobs. Headquarters jobs are highly paid, they're professional, they're diversified, and they have professional development tracks that really can anchor a community's economy in many different ways, okay? And of course, entrepreneurship. It's, again, not an industry, but an important part of our strategy, which is how do you facilitate entrepreneurship of any industries, really, whether it's transaction-based or innovation-driven. So these are major economic drivers or strategic industries or sectors. let me repeat, biohealth cluster industries, IT cyber cluster industries, advanced manufacturing, professional services, corporate regional headquarters, entrepreneurship, okay? And of course, the world keeps changing. Whatever we decided a year and a half or so ago to be these key industry drivers maybe already have changed. And I know they have changed, right? Who would have known blockchain would be such a big deal, for example? That cuts out all the middlemen. So we don't need the banks anymore, if that's the case. We don't need the lawyers anymore. We don't need a lot of middlemen anymore. And if we have technologies that can totally displace and disrupt the white-collar jobs, can you imagine what that would look like, right? So things have changed so fast that we just have to be constantly trying to get ahead and be nimble. Now, having said all of that, I also want to talk about, so what do we do about that? What about economic development? How do we do economic development to capitalize on these opportunities and turn these strategies into actions, right? So one of the things I found amusing is that there is a lot of misunderstanding about economic development, or what economic development is, or what it does, okay? Oftentimes, people think of economic development as something we do to benefit businesses. Do you believe that's the case? Yeah?
Yes.
At least your impression.
Facilitated, only facilitated.
Okay. So there are many myths. I actually bothered to write them down, say 5 myths about economic development, right? Because I found myself having to explain so much about economic development, right? So I wrote them down. One of the myths is economic development is all about business and it's only to benefit business, okay? Do you believe that's the case?
Trickle down.
Okay. Well, economic development actually is a public good. It is to grow jobs, attract investment, and build community wealth. That's what economic development is, okay? Business is an important part of it, but at the end of the day, it is to benefit the community. And I want to make a point. As much as we say and generally agree that the private sector is job creator, right? We usually like to say the private sector is job creator. Government doesn't create jobs. Businesses create jobs, right? If you think about that, it is really not the job of businesses to create jobs. Businesses stay in business to make profit, to stay competitive. In order to be profitable, they may end up having to cut jobs, right? It is the government's responsibility to make sure your community is welcoming to businesses, that they want to come here and hire people and grow community wealth. That's what economic development should be for, okay? And also, there's a myth about economic development that it's all about giving money to large corporations. We don't care about local small businesses. Have you heard of that? Right? Okay. Amazon is one example. Why do you give money to someone who doesn't need it while we are working hard to pay taxes, right? So there's also that myth, when in reality, what we do every day is mostly to help facilitate the growth of small businesses. They just don't grab headlines, unfortunately. Maybe 99% of what we do in economic development is to help someone start a business, to get through the permitting process, is to find the resources, find a customer, find a market, to get the programs that they're qualified for, and the loans that they need, and all that kind of thing. You know, Amazon only comes once in a generation, if that. Okay, so that's a huge myth as well. But I would like to just put it out there so that you understand that economic development is not just for business, and it is a common good. So a few things that you have asked about that I can touch upon now as part of both my lecture as a way of answering your question is basically, what have we done in economic development to grow our economy, okay, in light of all these challenges? So I want to start by saying, what have we done for small businesses to facilitate small business growth? And then I will talk about to help people start a business as well, okay? So one of the things before I forget is I want you to go to the county website, montgomerycountymd.gov/biz, B-I-Z, biz, if you are interested in starting a business. This is Montgomery County's business portal that makes it so much easier for anyone who wants to start a business to go through the approval process, to know what's the first step and next step and what I need to know to establish an entity in Montgomery County, okay? I would admit we are not the easiest place to do business, but we are competitive, okay? We are trying to make it easier to do business, and we have improved tremendously in the past few years to improve the experience of starting and growing a business. And our business portal was really an integrated portal that we put together to make it easier to present information and resources and connect our businesses. Okay, so check that out and give me your feedback. The other thing is we have a small business navigator that we engaged a few years ago who can usher through a lot of the difficulties of doing business in Montgomery County. And we are expanding that team, the business solutions team, so that we can remove the barriers of starting a business in the county. And we also have, by county executives' directive, a program that attracts new small businesses into Montgomery County. It's called the MOVE program, M-O-V-E. So if you have a business in your own basement that you run at home, or if you know of your friend who has a business in Northern Virginia, DC, or anywhere in this area or elsewhere, if they want to move to Montgomery County office, any office space in Class A or Class B, then the county will give that small business $8 per square foot off in leasing cost for the first 3 years. Okay, we'll give you one check, lump sum. It's a very easy application process. You just need to fill out a 1 or 2 page form about your business. As long as you meet these basic criteria, it's already almost pre-approved that you will get that $8 per square foot off up to 20,000 square feet. We have welcomed almost 80 new businesses since the program started about 2.5 years ago, okay? So that's a great story that you can share with others. And we have various loan programs, from small business revolving loan to now a micro lending program that make capital more accessible to businesses. But one of the most important things we did, and I was personally involved in, was we completely revamped the way we do economic development. A couple of years ago, the county executive decided that in light of community needs and in light of the changing economic landscape, we need to be more competitive. We need to respond to market changes more quickly. So he decided to turn our former government-based economic development department into a public-private partnership, so that business executives become board members representing different parts of the county and different industries and different sizes of businesses, sitting on the board to say, this is what I know and this is what I'm hearing, this is how we should position ourselves. You know, they ask questions, they bring ideas, and they make connections to help us improve our game in economic development. So I was personally involved in getting this organization built and get it off the ground. And I'm currently representing the county executive as a board member on the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. So the website of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, which is the face of our economic development in Montgomery County, is thinkmoco.com. thinkmoco.com. Sometimes you might hear if you commute, NPR ads would have that ad, thinkmoco.com, okay? So that's a major restructuring. And because of that restructuring, we have also gave birth to a new talent-based organization called the WorkSource Montgomery, because this is a talent-driven economy. We want to make a talent front and center in our economic development. So WorkSource Montgomery was established in order to meet industry growing demand for various levels of talent and talent that can meet different industries' needs, not just the PhDs and people with advanced degrees. And that organization works with University of Shady Grove, MCPS, Montgomery College to develop talent. I want to do a time check. Are we doing okay on time? Do I have until 12:30? Okay, so I will take a little pause and take some questions after this section. So we have realigned ourselves organizationally. We have ushered in more private sector leadership in our economic development. We have focused more on supporting local small businesses. And one of the things we have also done is we have invested a lot in innovation economy. Remember what I said earlier? One of our greatest challenges is we are being perceived as a gigantic research hub, but not an entrepreneurship hub, right? We have yet to really leverage all the federal assets. So one of the things that I did for the county executive in partnership with business leaders that I'm tremendously proud of was I helped establish something called the biohealth innovation. It's called the biohealth innovation. Go to biohealthinnovation.org. Okay, it is a 501c3 nonprofit organization established 6 years ago with the sole purpose of facilitating research commercialization, which is to commercialize research to push it to market. Okay, so the research would not die in the lab. It could actually be advanced and become science-based companies and benefit public health, global human health. Since we established the organization, major biotech companies have served on the board. I'm talking about Emergent Biosolutions, MedImmune, QIAGEN, which is a German headquartered company that is actually conveniently located in Germantown. You know, I love that. A very large one. You know. Oh, on that note, I like to say, you know, DC has Chinatown, we have Germantown, and I like to talk about the history of Germantown. And I would say, do you know why it's called a Germantown? You know, but now it's like a United States, United Nations. It's really, really diverse. So we have invested in this organization in order to engage a group of what we call entrepreneurs in residence, people with business skills, venture capital connection, and the science knowledge to build companies, to do translational research and a commercialization. This is one example of how we can partner with NIH and FDA and Johns Hopkins and all of that, okay? We need to replicate that success and do more of that with other institutions. So the second thing we did was through Senator Barbara Mikulski's Appropriations Committee. She was the chair of the Federal Appropriations Committee, to make sure that the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, which is a spin-off out of NIST, the National Institutes of Science and Technology, is located in Rockville. So the county gave them free facility in order to house the new National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. How many of you have heard of that? Yeah, one hand. We need to leverage better and to figure out a way to grow an industry out of that. But at least we have that in Montgomery County, in Rockville, right across the street from University of Shady Grove, actually, in that one floor building that used to be a county incubator. So these are examples of some of the innovation economy activities. What we also have done is we have transitioned our county incubators, which has been a good national model of facilitating early stage tech companies into private management, so that we have now 3 very strong incubators. One is the Germantown incubator on the Germantown campus of Montgomery College. It's focused on bioscience. The other is a Rockville-based incubator, which is a combination of different kind of technologies, ed tech, health tech, and so forth. And the third one, Silver Spring Incubator, is also a technology incubator that is in the middle of transition. And then I also want to talk a little bit about infrastructure. I talked quite a bit about the importance of quality places in attracting quality capital, in attracting quality jobs, right? Because if you think about that, you know, I like to tell the story of why the CEO of Yahoo, Marissa Meyers, made it clear to her employees that they were not allowed to work from home. On the face of it, it might seem counterintuitive, right? Because these days people love to telecommute. Why did she ban her employees from telecommuting and made them show up in the office as an innovation company, technology company? Why do you think that's the case?
So they'll share their ideas about potential business opportunities, new lines of business.
Yes.
If you're at home, you're not going to talk to anybody.
You are exactly right, because the innovation economy is a contact sport. Once an idea has been born and vetted and has become a project, you can use teleconferences and whatever to advance the project. In order to birth new ideas, people need interactions. They need to steal ideas from each other. They need to have casual interactions. You need to bump into each other, overhear each other's conversations at coffee shops and all that. That's why density matters. That's why quality of places matters, okay? The challenge with the suburban community is the inefficiency of human interaction. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to spend so much time scheduling meetings, right? I spent a lot of time scheduling meetings. I'm like, why should I spend time scheduling meetings if I could just run into people? You go to an event where there are 1,000 people, you run into 50 people you need to catch anyway, right? So that's the efficiency of more dense areas and quality places where people just want to be there. Can you close your eyes and think of a place in Montgomery County where you say, I don't know why I'm there, but I just want to be there? Starbucks. Thank you. Thank you. Or a Barnes & Noble kind of places, right? You don't have to have a purpose. You just say, I want to be there because that's where everybody is. Everybody else is, you know. So as a suburban community, we need more of those quality huddle places where people can interact with each other, where people, the talent want to huddle with each other. And just people in the community want to huddle with each other. So we spent quite a bit of time in the past decade, quite a bit of resources in the past decade investing in smart growth, in transit-oriented development. So if you hear terms like a TOD, that's transit-oriented development, because we don't want to keep growing and building and encouraging suburban sprawl. We want to build near transit, to build walkable communities, right? So where people don't have to drive, they can bike to places, they can walk to places, they can take public transit to places. Unfortunately, in Montgomery County, there's only one metro line. It's called the Red Line. In Northern Virginia, there are now 3 lines: Orange Line, Blue Line, and the Silver Line. And you wonder why they attract more young people? That's why. And the distance between each stop is much shorter over there, okay? So with these metro lines, you can build around them walkable communities, and commerce goes there, people go there, the vitality is there. And that's a challenge with Montgomery County, which is why infrastructure is so important. Thank you for mentioning Purple Line. Purple Line is not a county project, it's a state project. We are very glad the governor did not kill it, because he promised to kill it when he was campaigning. He did not kill it, but he cut budget significantly. Luckily, the federal government gave us $900 million, which saved the Purple Line. Now, here is how I can make this point very easily in terms of the importance of transit. As soon as Purple Line broke ground, which was just last year, finally it broke ground, right? All of a sudden, we saw a flood of leases being signed by corporate headquarters in Bethesda right away, in trophy buildings, meaning the most expensive buildings in Bethesda. Marriott was one of them. Okay, Purple Line had a lot to do with Marriott's decision to locate in downtown Bethesda. Marriott spent $600 million to move a couple of miles from Rock Spring, Bethesda to downtown Bethesda. Why? Because right now, their people, which is getting younger and younger in its population average age, right, have to take metro from DC, Northern Virginia, other parts of Montgomery County, whatever, to Grosvenor, Strathmore Station. And then, guess what? They take an Uber sometimes, because the ride-on may not come, or sometime, right? So the county now gives them a free shuttle so that we can take them directly to Rock Spring. But that's not a long-term solution. The whole office park of Rock Spring is not a vibrant office park. There are some see-through buildings, which means there's no tenant at all in the whole building, because businesses don't want to be in the middle of nowhere anymore. They have to take care of their people first. Whatever makes their people happy is whatever they would spend money on, okay? So we are glad Marriott is still in Montgomery County, wherever that is, right? But Purple Line, thank God, really played a very important role in that regard. After Marriott committed, we have seen Fox 5. And by the way, Fox 5 is not Fox. Fox 5 is local news. In case people don't like Fox, I have to put it out there, because I've heard even some council members say, why do we need a Fox 5? It's different. They report local news, okay? Fox 5 decided to move from DC a few blocks to Bethesda, and they signed in one of the trophy buildings. Okay, and JBG Smith, which is the region's largest developer, acquired the Vornado in Northern Virginia. Now, it could go the other way, but they decided to come to Bethesda, expand, and brought with it 130 jobs that pay very well. That's the kind of corporate headquarters we need more of, okay? I can give you a few other examples, but that speaks to the importance of transit. And the county itself has invested a lot in quality places and smart growth. Think of White Flint, right? White Flint is a different city now, different community. It's almost like our own regional hub, and it's going to be a vibrant live, work, and play hub. Phase 2 is going to move forward. Phase 1 has already shaped up very well. Gorgeous movie theater, restaurants, and all that, entertainment center. And it's built for people, unlike Tyson's Corner, which is built for cars. You know, our centers, community center, hubs actually are built for pedestrians, which is great. And we have also been investing in the revitalization of Wheaton, which is also on the red line. Wheaton is also super diverse community. And then the next one will be White Oak, which is where FDA is. So there will be many different hubs popping up because of the strategic investments the county has made. Because we understand, in order to compete for jobs, talent, and opportunities, we have to act like a city and add more city-like elements and invest in quality places, okay, strategically. We have invested quite a bit in bike share. If you see those bike share where you can swipe your card and grab a bike, that is another element that's very important for people who don't want to own cars, you know, to connect with transit and dense areas, and of course, walkable communities. So, affordable housing.
Can we take questions on transportation, or is that a good time for that?
Question on transportation.
Great, okay. So you talked about transportation hubs, they're key. Gaithersburg here is stranded. We have a MARC that only runs sometimes. That's one example. Number 2, we have all your tremendous pitching, which is well deserved on the universities of Shady Grove and all that stuff. They're stranded. Where's our transportation over there? And so it's a very timely topic for us locals in terms of Gaithersburg. We have very little in Old Town to support the quality of life. We're doing something on affordable housing to a degree, but that's the other topic. So
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit more about how we're going to deal with these satellite hubs that aren't necessarily on the Purple Line or the Red Line?
Well, that's a very good question. The Corridor Cities Transitway would have eased quite a bit of that, because right now, the Up-County area, which is now 1/3 of Montgomery County's home, 1/3 of the county population now lives in Up-County. It has experienced the most dramatic growth, but the infrastructure is not keeping up for multiple reasons. The Corridor Cities Transitway was designed to ease that congestion north-south by connecting Shady Grove to Washington Grove, to Metropolitan Grove, and all the way to Clarksburg. But it is not moving forward as we had planned because of lack of funding support from the state. Okay, the county has been advocating and pushing that for years. But I think we should still move forward on that because that's a bus rapid transit, BRT, that is cheaper than the Purple Line light rail kind of infrastructure, okay? And would have been tremendously helpful to Gaithersburg area. I have to say a caveat to your question, and the challenge is that Gaithersburg City has a lot of control over its land use and planning. It's
We
a
know
it's
that.
its own municipality, just like Rockville. It is own municipality. The county cannot dictate how it zones and how it prioritizes certain things.
We have an
Okay.
ex-councilman on the county that somewhat is reluctant to move on that. There's a little
Okay.
follow-up question about the
Okay.
$61 million
Yeah.
redesign to the White Flint hub. The county council jumped in and said, let's redesign the transportation area to support the Amazon development at potentially. Just new news. Can you comment on that at all?
I cannot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it. There's a lot of money.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay.
One other thing I'd like to say about the BRT that's so important about it is it's different than just regular buses.
Yes.
And it's different because, you pay at the station and then you get on the bus. So you pay and you walk on. So the getting in and out of the bus is much more rapid. The bus has fewer stops along the way too. So it's not, you're not stopping every 2 blocks to get on or off this bus. Okay? And the other thing is, in places where it's possible and where we can, there will be some dedicated lanes made available to it. There will be dedicated stations where it'll
Yeah.
pull off to one side so it won't block traffic. But where we can't, build extra lanes, well, it's a bus, so it can still move forward.
Yeah, so the beauty of BRT, if we could have enough funding, of course, that's always a challenge, is that they are not regular buses. They have dedicated lanes, no onboard ticketing, so it's like a metro essentially.
Hello,
Metro
Silver Line, Virginia. Hello, it's rail. Hello, 270 bus. Hello, is this a technology competition for the Western Metropolitan area?
Yeah.
Hello, Purple Line, and the line that's going to Frederick. That's an extension of the metro. Hello. Sorry.
You are saying things are not moving fast
You need
enough.
rail.
Yeah.
Urban Heights. How many kids ride the bus and how many kids ride the train? Okay, that's right. It's a whole other discussion.
Okay.
Much less expensive though.
Yeah.
Of course, but it's much proven that doesn't happen. We can't get the votes.
So, one of the things I don't want to forget talking about is the county's investments in affordable housing, besides quality communities. Because oftentimes when you invest in a community, it revitalizes, it attracts opportunities, but it also tends to make things very unaffordable for a lot of communities or a lot of age groups. So think about Bethesda, for example. So in the past decade or so, the county has invested over $1 billion in preserving and adding affordable housing units. And that allowed us to leverage over $1 billion of private investment in MPDU, moderately priced dwelling units. That's our term. MPDU is Montgomery County's term. It's equivalent to DC's inclusionary zoning kind of strategy, so that we allow communities to be more integrated, don't displace lower income people and focus them in one certain areas. But you will never really achieve equilibrium when it comes to things like that. It's never going to be enough affordable housing. In a rapidly urbanizing community, pricing is going to be a key factor in the kind of makeup of the demographics and affordability. It certainly is a stress point for a lot of local governments, but I have to say Montgomery County has done the most to add and preserve affordable housing than any of the capital region jurisdictions. We have done more than our fair share of that. Many other places come to Montgomery County to take advantage of our MPDU. We can always do more, but this is a major expense for the county to try to preserve and protect affordable housing. Let's see.
Is there
What?
a follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
Is there a nexus between the growth of seniors in Montgomery County, their owned properties, and a program that could make these available somehow to those that can't afford them through some kind of mortgage supplemental, some kind of involvement to take our growing asset of seniors and our needed place for housing for our mid-range salary owners? Has the county thought about something innovative like that?
I believe we have. I think a better conversation on this Probably we should have that with either our DHCA, the Department of Housing and Community Development, Community Affairs, and HOC. That's their focus, yes. But things evolve fast, and not all of that should be a local government's sole responsibility. We need a lot of innovative solutions and partnerships, to do that, including nonprofit communities to work with us on that. I do want to get back to some of the questions that were raised earlier. One of the questions is about Amazon. I think I have made a point about the importance of having corporate and regional headquarters. But in case I did not make myself abundantly clear, there are people who say, why do we need Amazon? It's just going to create more congestion, right? Because we're already a very congested community. Why do we need all of that? I hope by now you would agree that the urgency of growing the commercial tax base, not just depend on federal spending, okay? Because the beauty of growing the private sector is private corporations, unlike federal institutions, while both could create quality jobs, the corporations actually can pay corporate income tax, and the federal institutions don't, right? And that's an important revenue generator for Montgomery County that we need to understand. So the more federal institutions have, the more you forfeit the property tax and the income tax, okay? And the other is corporate and regional headquarters tend to create spin-offs when their senior executives, or maybe not so senior executives, tend to spin off and create their own companies. One MediMu has created a whole class of biotech scientists and executives that have created hundreds of companies, or that have led to the creation of dozens and then hundreds of other companies, right? So one Marriott has created several global spin-offs and then draw the talent, then create a whole cluster of talent base. And also corporate and regional headquarters tend to have this hometown feeling about their community. We have quite a few things named after Marriott. One, even though Discovery is leaving, but Discovery's founding CEO and his wife put $10 million into Montgomery County Soccerplex. We have a Soccerplex because of that family, okay? That's named after Discovery. Have you ever seen anything named after Microsoft?
Well, giant charitable organization of $1 billion.
So my point is, we have a building in Chevy Chase that is Microsoft building, but it's not headquarters. So it's different. Their sense of connection with the local community is different, right? Strathmore got a lot of money from Marriott. It's because they are hometown company, okay? We need headquarters companies to be part of our community because they invest in the communities, in addition to great jobs and contracting opportunities and spin-offs and all that. And their fabulously paid executives tend to serve on boards, committees, and commissions, serving anywhere, nonprofits anywhere from helping the poor to the arts. And that's the kind of community building that we need, not just counting on the county government appropriation every year, because it's just not sustainable with the community needs. We have a lot of fabulous nonprofits that depend too much on government appropriation. We just can't sustain that kind of model. We need corporate executives to open up their wallets, and a lot of them do, okay? So I hope I have made a case for the Amazon, and help you make the case to your neighbors and friends who say either, I don't want development in my backyard, or who cares about attracting young professionals, right? Or that we don't need Amazon. A community has only two choices. You either grow or you slowly start the dying process, okay? The only thing worse than growth is no growth. Growth is painful sometimes, it's inconvenient, but if you don't grow, you start the slow dying process. Nobody said we want to die, but essentially, if you don't welcome any new development and growth, that's the path you're going to be on, okay? Because the world is not going to wait for us to get our act together. They will compete and take away our kids and talent. So I want to talk a little bit about talent retention, right? We have one of the best public schools in the country. It still is. We could do better on some fronts. There is a gap between creating the kind of talent from MCPS and our ability to attract them back once they finish college. Because no matter how great Montgomery College is or University of Shady Grove is, most of our kids are not going to go through those systems. They'll go elsewhere for colleges, right? That's the reality. How can we make sure our hometown, homegrown students want to come back where we are both pricey and maybe not so exciting? That's a double whammy. No, seriously. This is why my son lives in DC, and not because I didn't try. You know I'm going to try, make up all kinds of arguments, right?
Manhattan, but DC.
Okay, right. But that is a challenge for our community, okay? And there are people, even including some policymakers, who say, oh, don't worry. Once these young people have school-age children, they'll come back. They live in DC for a few years, but once they have kids, they move to the suburbs. But my argument is it's not good enough. I want them back now. I want to make ourselves attractive to our kids now. I want our children and grandchildren to come back in their 20s, not when they're 25, not when they're 35. It's a return on investment. I want them to pay tax now because we raised them. I want them to create companies here because we need them. Seriously, why not, right? Why wait until they have school-age children when we have to create more tax dollars to educate them and only see them leave? This is not a winning strategy. If you want to be competitive, let's think about that. How do we make ourselves more attractive to people in their 20s who don't need to be here? How do we make ourselves more attractive to corporate headquarters like Discovery who don't need to be here because most of their revenue comes from China, India, or elsewhere? What is it about our community that makes people want to be here headquartered when their revenue does not generate from local spending? That's the kind of economic strategy we should talk about, which is how do we attract companies here that don't need to be here, that don't depend on consumer spending, whether it's a hospital or retail or whatever, restaurants or whatever. So everything I've talked about, all those strategies and sectors, industries, essentially are those kind of businesses that don't depend on local spending. Does that make sense? And until we can do that, we will always be in an unhealthy cycle. The only businesses that are here are the businesses that want money from your pocket without generating new wealth and new opportunities for Montgomery County. And we're going to be in trouble if that's the case, okay? So let me see if there are questions I have not covered or answered, okay? What are we doing to attract business? I talked about the MOVE program, talked about making it easier to do business, talked about restructuring economic development. I touched upon how we want to create more opportunities for students. One thing I would say is Montgomery College is doing a fabulous job to structure its curricula so that they are more industry demand driven, but it's never going to be enough, because things change so fast. And academic institutions have a reputation of moving slowly for whatever reasons. They are already better than most, but things do evolve very quickly. What we are doing now that you should be proud of is we are partnering with monster.com, which is a major job portal, right? To have a customized database. So anyone, not just students, who want to find a Montgomery County-based job from any companies can go to that database, okay? And so any company that wants to hire local talent from 90-year-old to 19-year-old, let's say, okay, can go to that database. But that's the point, which is we want to make sure our communities can be connected with opportunities. And we are transitioning quickly to a gig economy. You've heard of that? Which is, I don't want a full-time job. If I'm 65, 75 years old, I just want something to make me feel connected with the world, to feel a sense of purpose, to be able to apply my talent. I may be able to work 15, 20 hours. I don't want to work 40 hours a week, right? And generate some income, make me feel good about my life and be able to afford the things I want to afford, And that's the kind of gig economy we need to generate and create just, more opportunities of. And that's how you can sustain an aging but vibrant population in our community, okay? So that is an important factor we should factor in. It's okay to not have a full-time job that pays benefits and all that, but create more part-time opportunities And that kind of database that we're talking about is one element. And then we are creating different programs and resources to connect the students from high school forward, from youth entrepreneurship to like a Summer Rise program to introduce them to work environment. There are multiple initiatives underway on that front. Let me see. Transportation, housing, okay. Regionalism. There is one question about regionalism. I think it was your question, right? About lack of regional collaboration. This has been a difficult subject because of the tri-state, and if we say pretend DC is a state. Talking about that, I want to share with you that when I was working for DC Economic Development, we used to have a tagline that says, DC's new state bird is a crane, a construction crane, because there was so much construction. It's not a state, but you know what I mean? It was cute, yeah. But
It's competitive jurisdiction.
yes, between Maryland, Virginia, and DC, there are different political dynamics and different business cultures, okay? And we have not really moved the needle as a jurisdiction, as a 6.8 million capital region jurisdiction in terms of regional collaboration. We are much more competitive than collaborative. And the Metro is a symbol of that broken regional spirit. I have good news, which is if you pay attention to any major news, Maryland moved forward. Virginia, I applaud the Virginia legislature. Before they finished the session, they actually, on March 10, Virginia legislature voted for $150-some million dedicated permanent annual funding for Metro, in addition to whatever they are already funding. And with that, Maryland legislature also committed to that. So that is a very important step forward, because Metro has become not just a symbol of broken regional collaboration, but also broken Washington in many ways, which is unbelievable. It is the only major public transportation network that does not have dedicated funding in the country. When you think about Boston, the T system is wonderful for students. It's cheap. And think about New York, if you want economic growth, public transit is the lifeblood of economic growth. So if you want to weigh in, influence your policymakers, put pressure, those things are the things you should advocate on, okay? Let me see. I think I've covered most of these things. So finally, before I open up for more questions, let me make a point that I wrote down so I wouldn't forget, is as residents of Montgomery County, how can you help? Not just how can you take advantage of our resources and programs and opportunities, but how can you help move Montgomery County forward and drive our economic growth? What do you think you can do to contribute to our public discourse, to advocate for the right things? Linda.
Get involved politically,
Thank you. Yes.
decide who it is that you want to back for whatever position. Because that voice is important.
There is a direct correlation. I have thought long and hard, painfully, about this because I do economic development. There is a direct correlation between our economic competitiveness and the lack of people participating in local elections. Okay? Here's why. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to comment on that, right? It's already a done deal. But what I'm saying is because we are such a diverse but not connected community, with 3 out of 4 Montgomery County residents today, either from other states or other countries, there is really not a strong sense of community, a strong sense of identity, or a strong sense of place. And that is one of the biggest challenges in driving people to the polls, to care about local issues, to study local issues, to think about the future of this place as their own hometown issues, okay? And because so few people, in the last midterm election, 16% of the eligible voters in one of the best educated communities in the world voted. 16%. And we're talking about a closed primary system in Maryland, as opposed to Virginia, which is an open primary system, right? So when you are in the closed primary system, only Democrats vote for Democrats and Republicans vote for Republicans. You essentially encourage people to campaign to the extremes rather than to the middle, because independents are locked out of the system, okay? And when you have such a small percentage of people who actually vote, their voices are amplified, right? And you know most of these voices are not from Up County where the growth has happened in most recent years, because people are stuck in traffic or they are too new to the community to figure out who's who and what is what and which district they live in. You wonder why there are so many problems with Up County? That is why. Their voices are not represented. Okay? We have a lot of problems that if our citizens are paying more attention, could have been solved or solved earlier. It's not just who you voted, how you advocate for the issues and who pays attention to what you have to say, okay? Which is why I want to encourage you to not only pay attention by serving our boards, committees, and commissions, but by encouraging your neighbors and communities to come out and vote. With a large flood of new voices and new votes, most sensible and the smartest policies will be implemented, right? Because so many great voices are not at the table. That is the problem, okay? Let me see if there's, okay. With that, I want to see if you have any other questions I have not addressed.
Great talk. Great talk.
Thank you. Yes.
More a comment on the question. That is, I lived in Montgomery County for 30 some odd years, and it's always promoted itself, I think, as a family place, a great place to raise families.
Yes.
Which fights against millennials who don't have families.
Yes.
And don't care about the
Great point.
family things. And the other, a small thing that I think is a big thing, are the medieval liquor laws. So we have total beverage. Like a guy lives in Montgomery County.
Total wine.
Total wine and beverage. You can't open a store in Montgomery County.
Yeah.
You can't have a bar in Montgomery County. You want nightlife for millennials. What do you do if you don't have bars?
We got craft beer coming on.
Thank you for mentioning
beer,
that.
We got farm
Fan,
brewing,
thank you
and
for
it's
mentioning.
happening, and it attracts people, and we're doing a great job on that tiny little entrepreneurial niche for the millennials.
Yeah, but you're right. What's your name, sir?
Alan.
Alan. I'm glad you mentioned that point. Did you finish your point? Because I want to respond to that. Okay. Thank you for mentioning that. That was one of the points I raised with the county leadership a few years ago, before the term millennial became something that people drop as easy word. And that is, we have been either branded or self-branded as a family-friendly town. And even if you these days listen to some political leaders, they keep saying, I want to make sure Montgomery County continues to be a great place to live, work, and raise family. And I say, wait a minute, what about live, work, and do business? We just have not been mindful and intentional about sending the messages to businesses that they too are welcomed. Okay? And if you have a great school system that draws a lot of families here, without proportional growth of quality jobs, what are the parents going to do? They're going to be stuck in traffic. And if they don't vote, they'll be stuck in traffic longer. It's not a traffic problem. It is a business problem. We're not attracting jobs where they live. Or we're not keeping the growing companies to expand where they are, right? These are all related issues that we should have the courage to face and talk about publicly and have deeper dialogues, not just slogans and rhetoric. So I think, with being informed the residents means you think through some of the consequences about some public policies, right? How do we create not only a friendly environment to small businesses, and with a community where the dramatic growth comes mostly from immigrant communities, entrepreneurship is a huge opportunity. Where there's density of immigrants is where there's density of entrepreneurial activities. for a couple of reasons. One is entrepreneurs, immigrants by definition are risk takers, right? We gave up everything to swim across the Pacific Ocean to come here. And also, most of us don't do very well in established institutions, whether it's public sector or private sector, or academic institutions. We get held back very quickly because of our accents, because of the way we think and conduct ourselves or whatever. And so people strike out and have their own, grow their own wealth by creating their own businesses. And if we make it hard, we're being immigrant unfriendly, really, in spite of the lip services. But, oh, diversity is our greatest strength. Well, show me how. Okay?
Listen, a comment. I don't know if this exists in this area, but we were talking about entrepreneurship. And I have a nephew who decided he was going to establish, he went to Tuck, Dartmouth. He wanted to establish.
Could you speak up a little bit more, Linda?
Dartmouth.
Yeah.
Tuck, got his MBA, and he wanted to have a company that imported grass-fed beef, which he worked very hard to do. It's quite successful now. But one of the things he was approached about were angel investors from Dartmouth, of successful businessmen who were pooling their money. Now, I don't know how much Dartmouth had to do with that and how much they independently had to do with it. But we have so many universities in our area, and you were talking about the matching with the government and institutions. What about those institutions and angel investing to create that entrepreneurial funding?
Universities are getting better. Universities in our region are getting better. Hopkins are much more mindful these days about translational research and connecting with entrepreneurs.
Are we connecting as a
Yes,
company?
we are. We could do a lot more, but we have been working with the universities, University of Chicago, Maryland, University of Maryland, and Hopkins, and also Montgomery College. But I agree, a lot more needs to be done. We are just at the cusp of pivoting ourselves as an economy from very heavy federal dependency to looking at how to grow innovation economy and all that. These conversations are new in our communities, So more people need to be aware of where we are going and where we are, not just the little patch in front of their front yard or backyard, But you are right on, because this is something that more and more universities are jumping on. I am definitely seeing that. This region as a whole has a lot to catch up on compared to some other regions.
It does bother me that Montgomery County has a reputation of being business unfriendly. I mean, I'm not saying that's true, but it definitely has a reputation.
Well, I have to say, we have worked harder to overcome that, and the county executive has made that a priority in cutting through the permitting processes and all that. Part of it is the organizational structural challenges. A planning board does not report to the executive branch, and we also have WSSC, the water sewer system approval and all that. So with different agencies, collaboration becomes challenging. But we have been moving quite a bit on that. I agree, we overall need to internalize that understanding that this is a new day, that it's a much more competitive landscape, and it's a constant education process, with government officials, government employees, people who interact with businesses, and just how do we create a sense of consistency and predictability, as a local community. Yes.
My question or
Startup.
My
Okay.
question, I guess, would be piggybacking off the family-friendly idea, because you there is no middle ground. You are the wealthy or poor. If with the environment situation, because you don't see trees anymore. Except for in the wealthy neighborhoods where they've got the 2 acres land and they've got their own little tree forest around them. So by making it a city, or is the counties just willing to give up trees?
It's not an either or proposition. When I say we need to strategically build quality places, I'm not saying let's encroach on a forest. I'm not saying let's encroach our farmland.
Gaithersburg used to be, full of trees.
Yes. Yeah.
You ride around Gaithersburg and now Germantown, and they keep moving further and further up.
Yeah.
they're building the little communities like the town centers, which I think are great, by the way,
Yeah.
because puts everybody in walking distance. But you lose all the trees. And so, are trees gonna be replanted, or is the environment gonna be looked out for, or? I mean, I understand bringing in the businesses and all of that stuff. I understand that it makes sense. But I'm, as a person that's been here since the 70s, when you drive around, the majority of the trees are gone.
Okay.
Well, you're right. I mean, that is the case. A lot of things are going away, and a lot of it is also, participation at the political level. When you go and Gaithersburg prides itself as being a city of trees, right? It's in the symbol, right? We got the green tree right in the G there.
It died.
It prides itself like that, but it's not always the case. And we've got to participate in different meetings. At a local Gaithersburg, there's a thing that's going on at the corner of the Quince Orchard and Great Seneca Highway. They're building a new apartment complex there. And when you start talking about that with the city planners and with the organizations going in there, they say that 30% of that property needs to be retained as green space. Turns out that green space is also part of the pool and the cement around the pool. Okay, so you've got to look at these things. You've got to participate. We need to start holding our these guys accountable, so that there are berms around these areas, because it's that accountability still needs to be in place so that we have more trees.
They're pretty much gone.
I would like to pick up the conversation later, but let me get to a couple other questions. I saw a couple other hands, Bruce.
Green space. I presume everybody in this room knows about the agricultural preserve.
Reserve, yeah.
That is almost 1/3 of the square footage of Montgomery County is preserved green space. Minimal development, 10-acre type lots, 5-acre lots for houses, maximum density. And that is preserved. That's north of Clarksburg, north of Germantown, Clarksburg, but it swings around the top of the county. That is forever green. God bless the developers, the planners rather, back in the 60s and 70s, who put that package together. That will not change. You also, because I work with Friends of Seneca Creek State Park, remember you got a big state park right down the street here, which is not exactly underused, but it can take a lot more people. Go enjoy that park. Now, a couple other things. Somebody said something about millennials and we're running out of children, not having as many kids. Well, look at the enrollment at the county school system. In 1990, it bottomed out at about 96,000 students. It's up over 50% and grows every single year. Can't keep up with school construction. There's a lot of kids in this county. Millennials are getting a bigger portion of the population. But the families with kids, there's a lot of them in this county. One thing about development of new businesses, I know there's several locations in the county that provide office space for micro companies to get started. There's one down here at the Rio Center where if you want to start a business,
Launch workplaces.
You don't want to do it in your basement, you go in there and you can rent basically a cubicle or 3 cubicles or 8 cubicles for a month, 6 months, a year as the location to start your little business. So you don't have to make the huge investment of buying a building or signing a 10-year lease in an office building.
Thank you for mentioning that. I actually forgot that point. That's a great point. Yes.
Supporting that, I know.
Yeah, the county is supporting that. Yes.
What's it called?
It's called the Launch Workplaces. It's a company that with multiple locations that support early stage companies to start. And we are partnering with that. They are going to run our Silver Spring Incubator, but that's in addition to county run incubators. I do want to get back to your point about the county actually has a lot of kids in our school system. Yes, we have a lot more, but the point is, can we attract them back once they go away to become our economy going forward earlier before they have school-age children,
So I have a question about that. I have a 10th grader.
Yeah.
We happen to live near NIST, and I have a 10th grader, and when I give directions, I say we're across the street from NIST. And she points out to me, nobody knows what NIST is. So it makes me really wonder, like in her circle, 10 and high schoolers, they don't know what's available in the county, so they want to get out to go to school, but they leave with no knowledge of why they would come back.
Such a great point. Thank you. You know, I really think we should do a much better job educating our kids about our own community, right? We have, so many of them went through 12 years without knowing Silver Spring 10 years ago changed. They were like, wow, we actually have a city here. We could have fun. There's arts and there's all that. That's amazing. But yes, we could really do a much better job connecting the students while they are in school or even beyond, right? To fill into our local job opportunities while companies are always looking for students to hire. And so that's one of the things we've been working on. But it does take a lot of education and connecting. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make a follow-up point following your point. Because, first I really like your presentation, especially that you are mentioning about the attraction and retention of young, talented people. The question I have is, you mentioned about the efforts that you made to attract young people into the Montgomery County, like your partnership with Monster.com, the Summarize program. They're all great programs. Like my daughter is a sophomore at Churchill High School, and she's very interested in looking at the job outlooks for high school students or after they graduate from college, because that's what they are most concerned about when they apply for college, right? So they care about the overall job outlooks nationwide, but they also want to know the local career future. So I was wondering if there's a place in a county website that can target the young students, the high school students or college graduates, that they can keep, to keep them aware of the opportunities or the programs that the county government targets this group of population.
Right, and that's what this portal is supposed to do. It is being worked on right now, but that's the intention of that. And the college itself has its own portal and opportunities, but we want to integrate all of these into one, definitely, and in terms of attracting young professionals, I have to say it's like attracting businesses. The reason Montgomery County is the only suburban jurisdiction on the short list of Amazon's top 20 selected finalists is not because we put some pretty cover on the proposal. It is because of what we have been investing in and working toward for the past 10, 15, 20 years as a community, very strategically. We are one of the best national models of smart growth. We don't spread out when we don't need to. We focus on transit-oriented development. We're great nationally as an environmental protection community that with the ag reserve and vibrant urban centers and beautiful suburban communities. We have great school system. We have done a lot of things right to make ourselves competitive and attractive as a destination. In fact, our inclusive values are an important selling point because major employers depend on global talent, and we are very global and welcoming community where everybody can feel at home. All these are very important to major employers, and businesses have changed. They're not going to get away these days with not being LEED certified in their efficiency, all those kind of things, and not caring about local communities, and so all these things matter in our competitiveness, right?
There's a thread between your sense of place, your millennials, and your infrastructure. You travel to Europe, you can get on your phone everywhere because they have a 5G network. You get yourself online. We have new initiatives around here. Montgomery County could potentially take some leadership. Right now our sense of place is Bethesda. It's something we want to go to. We like Bethesda. Tacoma Park, they are what they are. It's also multi-county. Why not do some 5G development? Why not take some leadership position for the way that we communicate and stay in touch today? The program's just beginning. We're all worried about how the antennas are going to look. Why are we worried about how the antennas are? Why don't we think about how we can anticipate and utilize that to our own benefits? Why people would just be able to grab their Google and do anything?
Yeah. Well, this is also an area where public mindset needs to be adapted and influenced. We need to have these conversations. So since you mentioned the fiber connectivity, I should mention that along with transit connectivity, the county has also made a bold move in partnership, and this is an example of sort of regional partnership. You know, Ashburn, Virginia in Loudoun County is where 70% of the world's internet traffic goes through. 90% of the East Coast internet traffic goes through. Okay, 70% of the world's internet traffic goes through Loudoun County, Ashburn, okay? So what Montgomery County does, instead of replicating data centers, which residents don't like because they don't look appealing, we dug through a tunnel under the Potomac River where there's a narrow part of the river where you could just dig through. In partnership with a company, we dug through that and connected to Ashburn. So we basically bring the capacity to Montgomery County, it's the East County Silver Spring area, without having to build our own data centers. So we now can house very data-dependent companies, like some digital media companies. You know, Gannett, which is the home mothership company for USA Today. Their digital company is in Montgomery County now, because in East County, it's a brand new tenant that we welcomed because they are so data dependent. Okay, so that's an example that we have been being strategic in our investments in building connectivity. And the East County Route 29, which is going to be our first phase of BRT, which is like bus rapid transit, but it's not a bus, to facilitate the growth of a community around FDA area. That is going to
wireless as well as
that is
cable.
Going to be
That's
wireless.
key. We
Yes.
need to be wireless.
Yeah, and that BRT system we're developing is going to be Wi-Fi ready with the latest technologies. So it's an example. There are communities who don't like small cell towers. They are concerned about that. But we have to be open to whatever the latest technologies are. Or you don't have connectivity. You can't have it both ways, right? I want to thank all of you for your active participation, wonderful questions, and just most importantly, for being part of our community and part of our economy. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent.